There is a 1-minute video that is a thank you note from the FCC strikers that you collected for during the course of conference. So can we show that video, please?
All the delegates at the Brighton conference, your solidarity and financial support even made the dullest of days bright. Hey. Thanks to Mike and Damien from Hull and East Riding for standing with us every day. We miss you, boys.
Yeah.
Let me tell you about the strike. We work for a big Spanish company who make millions in profit off the back of the very lowest paid workers in our society, many of them on minimum wage. This action came about because one of our colleagues caught cancer and the company made him come back to work because he wasn't getting sick pay just so he could pay his bills. This strike is about dignity for workers. Flying pickets have been used during this strike. We have been to Driffield and got the lads out there who've shown their solidarity and come out in support, and we've also been to the Sutton Fields in Hull where them lads have also come out and shown their support. Spirits are high. We're all writing and singing songs and having a laugh on the picket line, even in this weather. This Saturday, on the 7th, we're having an International Day of Solidarity on the picket line, a festival with music and bands and just general jolly fun. We know that the teachers are having a difficult time with this government too, and it will be our honour to stand shoulder to shoulder with you on your picket lines. Thank you on behalf of my comrades for your support. Your support gives us strength to carry on. Thank you very much.
President, Conference, I think that short video is such a good example of what is right about our union, its members and this conference. Our activists, Damien Walenta and Mike Whale, have been supporting those badly treated workers, the FCC refuse workers. They brought their issue to our conference. You, in your generosity, helped raise £700 for their strike fund. Those workers are in turn offering solidarity to us as teachers. I think our conference has been full of inspiration and hope. From Wilson Swasson with his passionate call for international solidarity against education privatisation, to the British Rohingya and their moving messages, including about the transformation teachers can bring, including our delegate Dean Narayan, the first teacher and favourite teacher of our young Rohingya guest, from Kiri's truly fantastic speech about teaching and building and struggle, to the parents of the Avenue Primary School fighting academisation, through the passionate speeches which you have made this conference and which will lift us and inspire us for the next year of struggle. This conference, I think, has been truly wonderful. It has been the last conference of the NUT. It has been the first conference of the NEU, and the best is yet to come. A year ago, less than an hour before my speech to conference, Theresa May went to the steps of Downing Street and announced her snap general election. Well, a year turns out to be a long time in politics. Theresa's announcement led to some hurried rewriting for me. It led to a lot of work for you, but the general election led to something much more profound, a palpable sense that change can come, that change in education can come, and that our union can be a significant part of making that change happen. Last year, I said our union would try to make school funding the centre of the general election campaign. Well, no one can doubt that you and our members did that. You organised school and town hall meetings. You organised mass leafleting and lobbying of candidates. 3,500 volunteers ordered and distributed over 1 million of our leaflets. Our members shared and used the School Cuts website. 90,000 people shared our top viewed video, which was seen by more than 4 million people. Your campaign had a huge impact. In the general election, candidate after candidate told us that school funding was the top of voters' concerns. Pollsters said that education was one of the top issues, more than immigration, more than crime, for the first time in decades. Surveillance said that 750,000 people had changed their vote because of education funding. Conference, our union is proudly politically independent. We don't bow down to any government. We don't tell people who to vote for, but we did tell the truth about school funding. And if voters change their mind because of that, then we are pleased, and all politicians should listen. You should have no doubt that your campaign was the fundamental reason that Justine Greening announced £1.3 billion for schools in the aftermath of the election. Some politicians have cried foul. Some don't like head teachers speaking out. Some of them don't like us speaking out. Some of them have objected to the NUT spending £300,000 during the election. They've objected to the fact that we spent more than UKIP. Well, I say this. We make no apology. We will do it again. And now we have hundreds of thousands more parental supporters. Politicians of all parties should beware. Parents will not forgive these education cuts. We spent £250,000. And with that money and your efforts, we won £1,300 million for schools. Nothing like enough. But every pound of it won by your efforts. Every pound means fewer teacher jobs lost. It means fewer TAs jobs removed. It means class sizes held that little bit lower. It means a subject not lost. It's not enough, but every pound was a pound that we won for our children's education. And let's remember, that's not the only retreat we forced on this government. The year before last, Nicky Morgan was introducing plans to academise every school. After our campaign, that plan was dropped. Last year, Theresa May was planning her oxymoronic idea of grammar schools for all. Conference, the result of our general election campaign means that those plans were also dropped. And whilst we celebrate that success, let me just tell you that we should be congratulating NEU members in Guernsey, who this year have won their long-lasting campaign against the 11+. This January saw the last ever 11+ on the island. Guernsey is moving to a fully comprehensive system. Well done, Guernsey. Well done, Guernsey. Let's hope England and Wales catch up soon. But let me just say that our funding campaign is not over, not by a long chalk. There are still huge cuts facing our schools. Schools in disadvantaged areas are losing the most. It's not just our schools. Nurseries are being cut, sixth form colleges are being cut, and special education and disability high needs budgets are being cut. NEU research is confirming the impact of these cuts to the high needs budgets. Conservative-controlled Dorset Council is so worried about special education needs, they've set a deficit budget. More councils are doing that. West Sussex Council are so concerned that they propose to take money from the schools to subsidise the high needs budget. The Schools Forum rejected that. I think they were right to reject it. The council appealed to Damien Hinds. Astonishingly, in one of Damien Hinds' very first acts as Secretary of State for Education, he agreed that schools in West Sussex would get less than the national funding formula that his government is implementing in order that they should subsidise the special needs that his government is ignoring. Conference, this failure to fund special needs properly, this failure to respect the rights of children with SEND is an absolute disgrace and scandal. The government needs to act on it right now, and I am today calling on Damien Hinds to make it clear that action will follow. But I want to say to Damien that that action cannot be taking even more money from school budgets. Damien, your government is failing children with special needs, and you and the Chancellor need to fund an emergency cash injection to close the gaps in the high needs budgets. We need that announcement. We need it very soon. Parents won't forget or forgive that these cuts are damaging their children's education. A whole generation is affected. Our campaign is going to ramp up. This generation of children deserves a wide education that includes the arts as well as the sciences, at least as much as previous generations deserved it. This generation deserves sports and swimming and design and technology as much as previous generations did. They deserve individual attention and extra support when they need it. They deserve class sizes as low as those in other European countries. Our children only get one chance to go to school. And whoever caused the economic crash of 2008, it wasn't this generation of children. It wasn't the 5-year-old starting school this September who wasn't even born in 2008. It wasn't the 11-year-olds starting secondary school who were 1 year old when Lehman Brothers crashed and the government bailed out the bankers. Conference, these children only get one chance to go to school. They really are our future, our country's future, and this generation should not be paying the price. So today I urge all politicians of all parties to commit to fund schools properly. And I urge all teachers, all head teachers, and all parents to join in with our weekend of action on April the 21st and 22nd. I want to congratulate the Midlands divisions, coordinated by Russ Bragger in Walsall, who last week organised a banner drop that covered 170 schools in 12 local authorities. I want you to order those banners from our website. Let's spread those banner drops around the country. You can get them for free. I want to repeat my congratulations to the 3,500 members who ordered leaflets during the general election. They distributed 1 million leaflets. Let's do it again. Let's do it bigger. So get on the website, schoolcuts.org.uk, order those leaflets, posters and school banners. Let's make sure that the local elections see candidates being quizzed about their attitude to funding this generation's education properly. But education is far from being just about funding. We need to look at some of the fundamentals. We've been discussing them in this conference. I want to say some uncomfortable things. Despite us teachers working so hard, despite our students putting in so much effort, education in our country is going badly wrong. We are being let down by our politicians. Our country has amongst the most unhappy children in the world. Our children are more anxious about tests than in any other country in the developed world. School is now cited as the main cause of stress for 65% of 12-year-olds and 82% of 16-year-olds. And it didn't used to be like this. Natasha Devon, the ex-child mental health czar, sacked by the government for telling the truth about overtesting, reports that academic anxiety has now increased. It's reached the top of the list of young people's worries. It's higher than bullying. It's higher than concerns about social media. It's higher than body image concerns. And it's not just the students who are feeling this. Teachers in England are reported as having amongst the highest levels of stress of any profession. Suicide risks for primary teachers in England were 42% higher than the general population during the period 2011 to 2015. Our country has an unprecedented teacher recruitment and retention crisis. Many teachers are now saying they won't encourage their own children to take up the profession. And is this unhappiness and stress suffered by our children any surprise? Who can be surprised that children are stressed when in 2016, the government made us tell 47% of 11-year-olds that they weren't secondary ready just before they went to secondary school? Disgraceful. Who can be surprised when many teenagers who got the equivalent of a C in their maths GCSE last year scored just 17%? We should stop and think that through. The government made the maths test much harder, did practically no preparation. To make it look okay to parents, they used comparable outcomes to ensure that roughly the same number of candidates got an A star, an A, a B, and a C, etc. But that meant that the mark equivalent to a C was 17 marks out of 100 on some of the maths GCSE papers. The government tells children they get a C, but they put them through a paper where they couldn't do 83% of the questions. How do they feel What does that do to their self-image? Shouldn't someone be resigning over that scandal? And when Nick Gibb was asked about exam stress at the Education Select Committee by NUT members recently elected to it, he made a flippant remark about children needing to do more tests so they can get used to the tests, so they can get used to the stress. Really, Nick? More tests? More than baseline and phonics and Key Stage 1 SATs and practice SATs and timetable SATs and more practice SATs and Key Stage 2 SATs and more restrictive and harder GCSEs? If weighing pigs made them fatter, then Nick's pigs would be the fattest pigs of all. But weighing pigs doesn't work. The reductive, narrow curriculum and testing regime is failing our children. Nick Gibb is failing our children. We have the longest working hours for staff. We've got the most stress on pupils, but we aren't top of the international league tables. Countries like Finland and Norway, Canadian provinces like Ottawa, whose governments don't behave like ours, fill the top spots. They trust their teachers. They don't obsessively test children all the time, but they do better than our school system. So when we say we want change, it's not some imaginary, it's not nirvana we're looking for. It's being more like Norway. It's not a fantasy. It's being more like Finland. It would be a huge change, and we need to see huge change because our children are the most unhappy and our teachers the most stressed. But it is change that we can see in other countries. We need change now because so many children are denied the opportunities they need to study arts and dance and drama and design and technology. We need change now because the exam factories culture in our schools, that our schools have been forced into, doesn't promote analytic thinking, problem solving, imagination. It doesn't give children the life skills, the creativity that they are going to need heading into an era of automation. We need change now because our children are amongst the most obese in the world, but we don't teach them to cook. In many schools, we've stopped teaching them to swim. We've cut back on other physical activities. We've cut back on playtime. Testing, obsessive testing, has overtaken everything else in our school system. And this is all because, in my view, because politicians want to blame teachers for the effects of poverty and inequality instead of taking responsibility for it themselves. I don't want to be bleak, because I tell you, in every school, Kiri said this in her speech earlier, Warwick Mansell said it when he came, in every school there are teachers fighting for space for real education and creativity. In every school there are teachers who say that they pay a sacrifice to the great God of data so they can get on with their passion. Many head teachers resist the fear of Ofsted and protect their children and staff. But the truth is, all too many teachers have to fight the system to find the space. Head teachers are told they have to be brave to stand up to Ofsted. We need truly fundamental change so that the space passionate teachers need is theirs by right, so that head teachers can reclaim their professionalism and imagine a future for the profession, so that heads don't have to be brave to do the right thing. But to get that change, one of the things we have to do, and we have to get politicians to do, is to understand what's gone wrong. Since the 1988 Education Reform Act, we have had 30 years of a political consensus in this country that standardized tests, competition between schools, market methods like performance pay and academization are the way to improve education. It's been a cross-party consensus, and that consensus has failed. It has failed our children, it's failed our teachers. I just want to take you through some of the essential steps. In 1988, the Conservatives gave us SATs, league tables, Ofsted, and budget cuts. In 1997, Labour were a bit different. They did give schools more money. It was real investment that made a real difference. But they also gave us the top-down literacy hour. They gave us academisation. They gave us performance-related pay. They did some very positive things. The London Challenge, Sure Start. They started to act on child poverty, but they made no moves against the SATs or the league tables. They kept Chris Woodhead on as head of Ofsted. They carried on ploughing the same furrow, and that furrow was eating away at teacher autonomy, eating away at trust in the profession. The Tories win again in 2010 and give us Michael Gove, who soups up Labour's academies, who soups up performance-related pay, who gives us harder SATs tests and the phonics tests. Oh, and funding cuts, of course, and an end to the London Challenge, and an end to the EMA, and huge cuts to Sure Start. Gove had his fake concern for disadvantaged children, his claim that we were guilty of the soft bigotry of low expectations. One of his acolytes, Fraser Nelson, tweeted just this week, "Shame that the most articulate voices for social mobility aren't as angry about schools where the real problem lies." And maybe there you see the reality. Underlying these school policies, to blame teachers for poverty in order to distract attention from the government's responsibilities. Well, I say it's a shame that articulate voices like Fraser Nelson aren't as angry as we are about growing child poverty, proposals to reduce free school meals, and growing income inequality in this country, which is where the real problem lies. I'm proud that this weekend the union and its members have put the scandal of child poverty on the front pages of newspapers up and down the country. We've made it the lead item across the TV news channels. I'm proud that we invited Jeremy Corbyn 2 years ago, and Jeremy told us that tackling child poverty in order to improve educational improvement would be one of the first tasks of an incoming Labour government. Do you notice that sometimes the long-term nature of the educational consensus, the failed educational consensus we've got here, makes it hard to realise that things could be different? If you're a teacher aged 36 or less, the whole of your school career, the whole of your teaching career has been in a SATs-dominated system. It's hard to see from there sometimes that the consensus in our country is distinctly odd. Other countries are not part of this same consensus. We are a real outlier. Us and the United States. We're at the extreme end of the high-stakes, low-trust systems. So after 30 years of one policy direction, now is a good time for all politicians to look back, for us to look back with them, to compare ourselves internationally, and to demand that all of them introduce a real direction of change. We are beginning to see signs of a new consensus emerging. I went to the Lib Dems spring conference a couple of weeks ago. Layla Moran, for them, she spoke to their conference, and to thunderous applause, she said that the Lib Dems will abolish Ofsted, would abolish league tables, would abolish Key Stage 1 and Key Stage 2 SATs. They might not form a government, but they're saying that, and that puts pressure on other parties to say the same thing. The Greens have similar proposals, and they say they will return academies to local authorities. Jeremy and Angela are promising that Labour will found a national education service based on collaboration, not competition. Their manifesto in the summer promised to abandon baseline and set up a commission to come up with alternatives to the SATs. And do you know, just today, Sir Tim Brighouse, the man behind the London Challenge, in The Guardian, is calling for a new Education Act and a new national consensus. He says there was 1944, there was 1988, and we need a new act. One of his lines is, "Without good teachers, we are a lost civilization." Their consensus is breaking down. Our consensus is starting to grow. And do you know, it's not true to think that countries like ours can't make a change. Here at home, Wales is making significant changes. Changes to the curriculum because the old curriculum no longer matches the needs of a changing world. Changes to assessment to emphasise assessment for learning. Changes to teacher education because Wales recognises that investment in teachers is the foundation of educational development. It's going to be a hard road for the Wales government. It's hard with their big English neighbour, and we know that we are going to have very tough discussions with them along the way about the timetable, about resources, but it's plain. They know in Wales just as educators and policymakers in Scotland know that the pressures of social, economic and cultural change on schools cannot be dealt with by parroting a slogan about knowledge and tradition, as Nick Gibb does. Look further afield. Look at New Zealand. Our sister union, the NZEI, has been campaigning much like us against charter schools and against national standard tests. They've had a similar system to us. Well, the New Zealand Labour Party has just formed the government. Their Education Minister, Chris Hipkins, who I was really pleased to host in Hamilton House a few years ago, has moved decisively to abandon national tests and to bring the charter schools back under democratic control. Change is possible, change can happen, teacher unions can be the heart of it, and politicians are going to have to step up. We demand that change. We demand a break in the consensus from all of these political parties. So instead of reductive SATs tests, we demand a system that focuses on teacher assessment, on professional development, on investing in improved diagnostic assessments, rebuilding school-to-school collaboration and cooperation. We demand a national pay scheme for teachers. It's a good idea, should apply to all state-funded schools. We are demanding that local democratic authorities will organise school admissions, exclusions, pupil place planning for all schools in their area. And why don't we say that we will not have privatised structures eating away at public involvement, promoting private voices with private motives? Warwick Mansell wrote a blog for the NUT this week. He points out in it that Sir Dan Moynihan, Chief Executive of Harris, best paid person in English education, getting £450,000 per year. Sir Dan is on 35 governing bodies. He chairs many of them. Where is the public accountability in that? We've got a system of private voices with private motives, and we have to say we're going to end it. Conference, why don't we say that multi-academy trusts, if they exist at all, would become elected bodies full of parent and staff governors? Why don't we say that every school will have an independent elected governing body that can decide to leave a mat? Why don't we allow local authorities to open new community schools and say that we are having democratic accountability? Why don't we demand that politicians cease their incessant day-to-day interference in the curriculum and how we assess our children, instead building independent bodies to consult with us with our professional involvement and to support professional excellence and build a national consensus instead? Why don't politicians agree with us that we want an education that prepares children for life and a good society as well as for work? Why don't we say that happiness is a good thing at school? We know it's not impossible. Looking around the world, we see it happens in other countries. So our strategy is to work with politicians and with parents to build our campaigns, to look at the best in the world, to decide what we want for children here. We want the best in the world. We want the best teachers with the best diagnostic assessments. We want the best resources and the best training. Across the years, governments have tried to marginalise teacher voices in education. They've tried to marginalise teacher unions. Well, they haven't succeeded. We're still here, and we're fighting our way back in. And as the NEU, we're going to do that more, and we're going to shape the future of education. NUT and ATL together scored real successes over school funding. We pushed Nicky Morgan back on forced academisation. We derailed Theresa May on grammar schools. And as the NEU, we are making the news and setting the terms of the debate. We are going to invest significant resources in the baseline campaign. Our campaign with the More Than a Score Coalition is growing. With the motions passed at this conference, we will commit those significant resources. We need your help. This campaign must win, and it can win. Of the 3 organisations which ran Baseline in 2015, one of them is saying that Baseline Mark II is verging on the immoral. Another, Early Excellence, is more measured in its criticisms. It says Baseline is merely self-contradictory, incoherent, unworkable, ultimately inaccurate, invalid, unusable. Statisticians have poured scorn on the notion that you can test 4-year-olds and get a reliable result. Baseline is unloved. It's a test without a feature. And I tell you, we are in the game on workload. We haven't won. Nobody could pretend that, but we are in the game. Michael Gove said there was no problem with teacher workload. He refused to work with the unions. Damien Hines now mentions us in the second sentence of his video, and says that we're working too much, and gets the Chief Inspector of Ofsted to say there's too much marking going on. Because of our campaign, they are on the back foot over teacher workload, and now is the time to press them much harder. Damien Hines could introduce a limit on teacher working hours. He should introduce a limit on teacher working hours. He could do that for this September. Then heads would have to talk to teachers about what really matters. Teachers could start to get back their professional control. And if Damien really wants to do something about the crisis in teacher recruitment and retention, if he wants to stop it turning into a catastrophe, then he is going to have to act on pay as well. And as Mary said to you on Saturday afternoon, if he doesn't act, then the National Education Union is big enough to act. I'm going to speak to ATL conference on Monday. I'm going to give the same message there. If the government don't act, we will act. If they don't act, we will consult members, we will take action. But no one should feel they have to wait for a national ballot. We can all be taking action on workload and pay now, and it's happening up and down the country. Divisions are running workload charter campaigns. School groups are taking action with union backing to refuse triple marking, to refuse photographic evidence, all with the implied backing of the head of Ofsted. In September, we will launch a major national campaign producing more materials which will arm all members, reps and officers with brilliant materials backed up by regional officers and organisers. We are determined that our campaign will end the overworking of the teaching profession. We will not rest until it does. And if Damien Hines doesn't want national action, then he knows what he has to do to sort it out. Now, I want to congratulate teachers up and down the country who are already making a stand for themselves and for their children. I want to congratulate the NEU in Wales who have forced a review of the school categorisation process and accountability measures and are pushing the Wales Assembly on a better deal for supply teachers. And just by the way, weather permitting, there will be a Wales NEU conference before the end of this year. I want to congratulate the teachers at Avenue Primary School, at Keir Hardy Primary School, at the Village Special School, at Acton High School, and many others who have taken strike action this year against academisation and where we are winning. I want to congratulate the teachers and parents at Bridge Special School Ipswich, at St Philip's Church of England in Romsey, who both fought brilliantly and where we won successful campaigns against academisation. The number of schools that converted last month was the lowest in 4 years. We are winning on academisation. I want to congratulate the teachers in Doncaster and Wakefield who forced the bad practice of WCAT out into public view. I want to congratulate those in Cumbria who did the same over the Bright Tribe Whitehaven Academy. We are exposing what these people are doing. We're exposing their mendacity. I want to congratulate the teachers in East Sussex and Warrington who are preparing to take action against heads who won't implement the 2% pay rise. The teachers in sixth form colleges who voted to take action and who won as a result. I want to congratulate the NEU members in Manchester who organised a brilliant More Than a Score meeting, the activists in Liverpool who organised a fantastic demonstration with the local council against education cuts, the people who organised the sexism demonstration, the sexism conference in London, the young activists, our young activists in the northern region who have persuaded a PGC cohort to run a competition for best education campaign. Across the country, there are teachers taking action, showing real imagination. I want to congratulate all of you that I didn't name who are doing something similar. I want to congratulate all of you who are building our young teachers networks, our black teachers networks, the disabled networks, the trans teachers group, doing our work on challenging sexism, and all of you who are doing the unsung work of caseworkers and health and safety reps. They've tried to break us. They haven't succeeded. We're still here. We're growing stronger. In fact, we've been here since 1870. The union was set up to fight payment by results, for national pay and a decent pension. Do you know the very, very first speech given at the very first conference castigated the twin evils of ignorance and poverty? We've been on the right side of history the whole time that we have been the NUT. Our union fought for free secondary education for girls, for comprehensive schools. We fought against children being labelled educationally subnormal. We were the first to demand equal pay for women. Our union was home to the suffragettes, to Mary Gowthorpe, an activist in Leeds NUT, to Millie Lansbury, an activist in East London. Our union and our members, like Michael Dance, featured in The Guardian, were at the forefront of the movement against Section 28. Our union has always been at the forefront. The NUT members led huge campaigns against racism and the marginalisation of black children in our education system. Our members were there at Cable Street to stop the anti-Semitic march of Mosley and his fascists. Our brother Blair Peach gave his life nearly 40 years ago on a mass peaceful demonstration against the National Front who were trying to divide our society. And today we are pleased, proud, to be part of the movement against those who follow them, the EDL, the Football Lads Alliance. Conference, on many, many of these issues, we've made enormous progress. But the price of liberty, the price of humanity, is eternal vigilance. I think Blair Peach and those generations of teachers would be proud of the stand that we've taken this week against Islamophobia. Conference, some of our Muslim brothers and sisters went home early yesterday because they or their families were frightened by this evil Punish a Muslim Day. Conference, we stand with our Muslim brothers and sisters. We stand up to all racism and bigotry. We oppose all discrimination, and in doing that, we make our movement stronger. Next year in Liverpool, we will have the first joint conference of the National Education Union. And we will see the combined voice of nearly 500,000 education professionals, a majority of all teachers, the game changer for education. We want the NASUWT to join us. We, in the NEU, have growing campaigns. We have increased credibility. We've got increased purchase on politicians of all parties. Education is the great liberator. We will make it a force for social justice. We intend to win for the profession and all children and young people across England and Wales. Good luck this year with your determined efforts to defend teachers, support staff and education. Good luck with your momentous efforts to build parental support and engage with local politicians. I'll see you in Liverpool next year, whichever week it is. I'll see you in Liverpool next year, unless I see you on a picket line or at a campaign meeting before then. We will be the game changer. Viva NUT, viva NEU. Thank you.